Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us for a short presentation about the mediation and mediation skills training that's on offer. We've been discussing with Mark Pinchin and East Mids Councils about a range of training courses in mediation skills, which we're going to talk about today, just in a brief presentation, telling you all the options for training that's coming up for in the region. To address the kind of things that happen, grievance type disputes, interpersonal fallouts, sorts of things that occur when communication breaks down, when people have conflict in the workplace. In a second, I'm going to show you a video clip of a simulated case of the kind of thing that actually happens, and then talk about the range of training courses that are on offer to be able to address that. So what I'm going to do is just to share screen and skip to a slide which will lead into a short video clip for Heather and Sally, who are two colleagues in a workplace who have got some interpersonal issues that need to be solved. So let's go there and take a look at the video clip, and then we'll talk to you all about it when we come back after three and a half minutes of Sally and Heather.
Sally and Heather work together in the accounts department of Connors Plumbing Supplies. Heather has been in her role for some years, while Sally has only recently joined the department following a reshuffle. There is some bad feeling from Heather over Sally's appointment, with Heather claiming that Sally only got the job because of her friendship with James, the departmental manager. Sally and James had worked together over a number of years before the current reshuffle. Sally claims in return that Heather over-scrutinises her work and her timekeeping and is cold and unfriendly with her. The two have quite different approaches to work, and this has begun to cause some tension. James has no issue with the two of them getting the job done, but has needed to speak to them separately about the importance of getting on together. They continue to rub each other up the wrong way, and there is often an atmosphere in the office. It is Tuesday morning, a few days before the deadline for an important report to be completed. Sally is on the phone to her friend.
Hi Liz, yeah, it's nice to talk to you. Yeah? I was just ringing to find out what time we're going to meet for the theatre on Tuesday. Yeah. We go for about 1:30. Perfect. Yeah, it'd be fantastic to see you then. Oh, actually, do you want to go for a coffee first? That would be great.
Oh, for God's sake, it's not like it's even dinner time or anything.
Yeah, 1:30, Liz. Yeah, that should be absolutely fine. Okay. All right. Bye. What are you doing at the weekend?
Nothing special.
Oh, we're going out with Phil. It's his birthday. Do you know Phil from sales?
Yeah.
It's his 50th. Would you like to come along?
No, it's all right. It's not really my kind of thing.
Oh, it's his 50. You should really enjoy yourself. Come on, you're fantastic time if you come.
Look, I said no, I don't want to go. We've got this important report to get finished. Perhaps we should be getting on with that instead of organising our social life.
Well, oh, has she had a second baby yet? Oh, that's lovely. She had a little boy. What's she called him? Oh, that's really nice. Hold on a minute.
Sorry to interrupt. How's your part of the report going?
Yeah, getting it done.
Do you think you'll have it done by tonight? Only I've got mine finished and I need to work yours into it.
By tomorrow. Yes, hi Ruth. Sorry for the interruption.
Sorry, Sally, I've not finished.
Sorry Ruth, I'll have to ring you back.
You've been on the phone for nearly 20 minutes. You could be doing your report then.
I'm
Before
on the
that, you
phone
had a break.
to Ruth from Albright's.
Well, it doesn't sound like it. You was on for at least 20 minutes and before that having a break.
Is that right? That's the crux of it, isn't it? You are constantly monitoring when I go for my break. You think you're in charge, well you're not. You're always evaluating what I'm doing and timing when I have my breaks. I've had enough of it.
No, I don't. You're just being bloody childish now. For God's sake, can you just get your part of the work done? I've had enough of this. You're an absolute nightmare. I'm going to have to speak to James.
Heather goes to see James to complain about what she sees as Sally's lack of commitment to the job, distracting behaviour and disregard for important deadlines. James spends some time with Heather and then asks to speak to Sally, who tells James that she is upset about aspects of Heather's manner towards her. Later that morning, James gets them together for a joint conversation, partly about the day's events, but also about the more long-standing conflict between the two of them. James has previously spoken to the two of them about their working relationship and feels that he has done all he can. He proposes that they try mediation to build a better understanding of each other. An external mediator is brought in. He starts by seeing the two colleagues separately with the intention of getting them together later on.
Okay, so this is what goes on. A typical sort of fallout between two colleagues. Clearly, some issues there to do with the restructure. So the one colleague has come in, Sally's come in from elsewhere into the department. She's doing the accounts function along with Heather, who's clearly been there a longer time. Issues to do with that restructure is disrupting Heather's routine. It's disrupting how she likes to work, to have this new person coming in the department. And there's clearly perception there of unfair treatment. Heather is alleging that Sally only got the job because of her friendship with the manager. And there's some sense in which she feels unfairly treated here. She's had a new person imposed upon her with an allegation that that wasn't done properly. There's perception there she's not been treated fairly. There's clearly a clash of styles between them. So for Sally, she values the relationships with customers. She will spend time on the phone, chatting to customers, getting to know them, perhaps less time at the keyboard. For Heather, it's important that we hit the deadline, got to make sure that you contribute your part of the report. She's got her headphones on, she's concentrating very much on the task rather than the people. Whereas for Sally, it's perhaps more about the people and less about the task. Bit of a clash of styles. The manager's looked at it, the manager doesn't think there's any performance issues there. They are getting the job done, but there's clearly some issue to do with these two quite different styles between these two workers. And consequently, communication breaks down between them. So, a bit of a flare up there in the kitchen where it's gone on long enough and they're getting impatient with each other. From Sally's point of view, she's impatient at being scrutinised of Heather acting as if she's her boss, and of Sally not being able to do the job in the way she likes, where she's going off into a corner to have a chat with a supplier and building that sort of friendship with the supplier. From Heather's point of view, she's really impatient about the fact that Sally doesn't seem to be concentrating on getting the task done, on contributing her part of the report that Heather's waiting to complete. So a big breakdown in communication, as we can see, shouting in the kitchen, throwing files down onto the worktop, etc. So this is where they've got to. Manager gets involved. Manager does what he can. He's spoken to the two parties separately. He's tried to get them together for a conversation. There's an allusion in the film to this having happened before, and the manager feels he's done all he can. So he's taken it as far as possible. There would be a little complication in the manager trying to resolve the conflict between these two colleagues because of his own involvement or alleged involvement. So Heather's alleging that Sally only got the job because of her friendship with James, the manager. So that would be tricky. That would probably contaminate any attempts to try and resolve that internally, and it might dispose James earlier to think about using a mediator, somebody who's removed from the situation. So this is where he's got to in the videos. James has done all he can. He's tried to facilitate a resolution meeting between them, and it's time to bring in a mediator. So the mediator might be an internally trained mediator, as happens within a lot of local authorities, or it might be somebody external to that particular workplace. So just to bring it back to your particular focus, around the East Mids, there are quite a few trained mediators within local authorities. We train people within Leicester, within Notts County Council, within Notts City Council, various other authorities all around. So there are a number of mediators out there, accredited mediators, and quite a number of people trained in mediation skills as well. I'll come back to that when I start to talk about the courses. But just before we go into that, let's think about what does it mean to bring in a mediator. So in the context of that film, James has done what he can. He says, okay, time to think about using a mediator. So the mediation with these two colleagues, it would have to be voluntary. We couldn't make these two people take part. They would have to want to sort things out. They would have to want to have this impartial third party come along to help them to have a good conversation, to go over what's going wrong between them, but more importantly, to talk about how they could make it right. And they would be the ones to create the agreement. So importantly, with mediation, it's the two parties who wish to resolve their conflict, who see that this is a good opportunity to get their heads together, come up with some better way of working together. It's they who create the agreement, so it's they who can put their shoulder behind the agreement and make sure that it works. If something is imposed on people, it's necessary from time to time, but if an agreement, particularly around more sensitive interpersonal issues, is imposed upon people, they tend to resist it, tend to push back, or tend to prove that it's not going to work. But the idea in mediation is, because of the voluntariness, that is a good start with mediation, so that people feel invested in the process, they feel invested in the resolution they come up with, and they're more inclined to try and make it work. So that's thing one. Thing two about mediation has to be private. So when we're speaking to individuals for an initial private meeting as a build-up to a mediation session, we give an assurance of confidentiality, of privacy. We don't retain any notes from that, and it would be exceptional that we would make a disclosure. But clearly, if there were any safety issues, any risk issues, any issues that suggested somebody was going to come to any harm, then we'd need to make disclosures. But otherwise, we keep private what people say to us in the individual meetings in mediation. And from the joint mediation session, if the two parties make an agreement and they're happy for that to be shared with the referrer, for example, with the local manager or whomever, then we can do that. Otherwise, we don't share anything from the joint session either. So it's not part of a minuted recorded process that we can then use any part of their discussions in any future process. So it's without prejudice is what the lawyers would call it. So nothing that gets said in mediation can be used in any other process. And we have a very well-defined written confidentiality agreement that lays out the terms, and we ask people within a structured mediation process to agree to the terms of confidentiality. It protects them, and it ensures that people can speak openly and honestly as well. The third thing around mediation has to be is future focused. So when people come into mediation, they are inclined to finger point, attribute blame to the other party, go over the history, say, well, you did this, you did that. Sure, that's what they're going to do. But in terms of what the mediator does with that, we're trying to reframe that away from blame, or away from people allocating fault to the other party, and trying to replace that with a shared responsibility to make the situation better. So we want the two of them to get to a place where they're trying jointly to make the situation better. And that's the role of the mediator, is to get that future focus, albeit it's helpful at the start for them to have that offload and talk about all the things that have, all the hurtful things that have gone on from each of the parties' points of view. They'll be different. But the mediator can quite skillfully work with that and get that round to a place where they're actually making an agreement about what will happen starting tomorrow, what we're going to do differently in terms of our behaviours, really, in order that the conflict becomes resolved. So they're the three essential building blocks of mediation. It has to be voluntary, confidential, future focused. And in terms of the training suite, what we're trying to do is to provide a range of training courses, which I'll go through in a second. Ultimately, depending on what you've done before in terms of your training, depending on what you want to do with this training, the idea is that the range of training courses will get you to a place where you can reduce the chance of having to go into grievances and employment tribunals. If you can feel confident and competent to intervene early with sorts of interpersonal disputes, like we've seen the example there with Sally and Heather, you can head off a grievance. And there are some really good figures from the CIPD about how much management time gets taken up with handling grievances, how much management time and expense gets taken up within employment tribunals. And the idea is that through this training, you can nip situations in the bud and preclude the need to go into those very expensive and distracting formal processes. To provide the capability able to resolve it when relationships are strained. And we know that there are, we're working in difficult times, relationships can be strained for all sorts of reasons. So to have the capability within your authorities, your local authorities, your departments, to be able to resolve it. So to have people you can call on to facilitate resolution meetings, get conversations going, to be able to nip situations in the bud. And really management capability in how to manage people. So I consider it a very important management competency to be able to deal with conflict, to positively resolve conflict, to be able to address sticky interpersonal situations between people. So it's about raising your capability in how you manage your people. And with one of the courses that I'm going to mention, it's about increasing the number of accredited mediators in the region. So for accredited mediator training, there are already, we trained quite a few people around the region already, but people leave, people don't use the skills and tend to lose them. A good example with mediation is of if you don't use it, you lose it. So increasing how many mediators there are, accredited mediators there are in the region. Not just for use within your own authorities, but what we have seen in the East Mids as well as across the country is that people can actually share mediators across boundaries. So local authority A can actually use the mediators from local authority B sometimes to add that level of independence and impartiality. But that's a level of detail that's perhaps a bit further down the road. But ultimately, for the whole of the region, to increase the number of accredited mediators. So here are the courses. So starting in November, looking at a one-day conflict resolution skills for managers. So this course is in two parts. In the morning, we're looking at dealing with conflict between you and one other person. So how to more confidently handle it if somebody comes to you with a complaint, with an aggressive approach about something they're unhappy with, comes to you with maybe an issue to do with a colleague or to do with a process, or maybe something they think you've said or done, how you can better address that when the conflict comes to your door. And the second part of that course is about how to resolve conflict between two other people. So it's only a half a day on resolving conflict between two others. So it's a quick skate across the pond of what we do in terms of how to run a facilitated meeting, how to run a resolution meeting. So half a day on that, and then the first half a day on dealing with conflict directly towards you. So two sort of things there within the objective. Between you and another person and between two other people, and we're showing you some better ways to do that. So it's more of a show in a one day. We use some video material. The trainer is a practicing mediator themselves, so they got plenty of war stories to be able to talk about those two things, two types of conflict there under the objective. So that's the first course. That's a one day. That's late in November this year. Second course in January next year is zooming in on the second part of that. So it's taking a closer look at how you resolve conflict between two people who've fallen out. So how to resolve a Sally and Heather type situation. 2 days where we walk through the 7-step model that we use here at UK Mediation. Lots of simulated cases on that course. So there'd be opportunities to practice, opportunities if you want to get stuck in and actually have a go at using these mediation skills. And that's a 2-dayer. We've got lots of case examples that are drawn from local authorities. So the idea is that should enhance your confidence in what you can do next time something like that comes to your door. So we'd like you to leave this course. The objective is that you can feel confident, you're happy to walk towards situations, but also competent, you know what to do when you get there. In terms of facilitating a better conversation between work colleagues and using some key mediation skills. So you won't be a trained mediator at the end of this, but you will have a good handle on some key mediation skills that you can use for those situations that I mentioned. But also in other situations, there are some of the skills that you would pick up on this 2 days, which might be helpful for running meetings, might be helpful for dealing with service users from time to time or addressing complaints from service users. So there's some nice generalizable skills there in the 2-day workplace mediation skills in January next year. And then the big course is the accredited training, the Interpersonal Mediation Practitioner Certificate. So this is a 5-day, 40-hour mediator training course. And this gets you to the top level of having accredited mediator status. So you'll be very competent and confident to be able to mediate all types of workplace disputes, but also have the badge. So this is about gaining the accredited mediator qualification so you can say you're a mediator. Right from being able to talk to people about mediation, how to select which cases would be suitable for mediation, how to run the initial meetings with people, how to encourage them to get together, thinking about running a joint mediation session, all the pitfalls and opportunities, things that go right, things that might go wrong, through to looking at the sort of paperwork around things, the confidentiality agreement, how to write up a resolution agreement at the end of it, and then about how to follow up situations after an agreement's been made, or indeed what you can do if an agreement is not made. So that's the big accredited course. This is a level 4 course, which means it's a similar level of complexity to the first year of an undergraduate degree. So it gives you a level 4, quite a high level qualification. A lot of training in the field is level 3. This just goes a bit further in terms of encouraging your critical self-evaluation, encouraging your reflection on your developing skills as a mediator as you go out and start to put the training into practice. So there is an assessment, because it's accredited, of your skills on the course, and then there's a bit of a written assessment afterwards as well, in order to get you certified, as it were, and accredited as an accredited mediator. So there's those 3 courses: conflict resolution skills, 2-day mediation skills, and then the 5-day qualification course, the Interpersonal Mediation Practitioner certificate. And then there's a development day after all of that, development day on 30th of January, which is for people who've trained with us or trained with someone else. So I'm aware that there are people within the East Mids region who've trained with other organisations, although there are a lot who've trained with us as well. But for people who maybe trained a long time ago or trained with somebody else, as well as people who are just new in the saddle, as it were, who've just done the qualification, to align everybody's training with the 7-stage model that will be running through all the courses that I'm talking about today. So it's for people who've either trained with someone else or trained a long time ago. Come along. There'll be an opportunity to present cases, talk about casework you've done, a reminder of the model, any critical situations people want to talk about, or we can zoom in on some particular skills that you're finding useful, or perhaps skills that you're finding it harder to put into action. So nice way to pull everything together on Thursday, 30th of January there with the Mediator Development Day. Okay, so they're the 4 courses that are on offer. So questions now. What we did on the day with this presentation was invite people to raise their hand and speak. We've recorded separately the Q&A at the end of this session. It took place on 21st September, just to keep things neat and tidy. But you can also email Mark on that email address if you'd like to do that, if there's anything detailed. And there is a document that's been produced, a brochure, as it were, which will help you to get the detail and the dates and the differences between the courses. So that's it from the presentation. Separate Q&A has been recorded with a few questions about the various courses. We recorded that on the 21st. But for now, that's the end of this presentation. We hope to see you on one of those courses. Thanks for watching this today, and good luck and goodbye.